Hello, I'm Esther Gitu-Yuot. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Critics of U.S. Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris use her gender both subtly and overtly, saying a woman cannot hold the most powerful job in the free world. In East Africa, a technology company invests in large-scale solutions to help at-risk communities threatened by desertification. And a doctor in Africa taps technology to improve lives through healthcare, transport, and connectivity. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. We begin our newscast in the United States, where critics of Vice President Kamala Harris are using her agenda to attack the Democratic candidates, saying both subtly and overtly that a woman cannot hold the most powerful job in the free world. Gender scholars say those railing against Harris are also choosing another line to verbally assault the politician Harris. Viewers Anita Powell explains from the White House.
Vice President Kamala Harris's quest for her nation's highest office has run headlong into a barrage of sexist attacks, hammering her love life, her clothing, and even her distinctive laugh. All classic hallmarks, experts say, of misogyny.
What's wrong with somebody running for president of this country?
Harris seeks to flip this narrative, which has persisted for more than a century since the first time an American woman ran for president. But scholars say Harris faces an additional challenge that she can't escape: her mixed race. Here's former President Donald Trump, the Republican presidential nominee.
She was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
This, scholars say, is a textbook case of misogynoir.
Misogynoir is the horrible hybrid between sexism and racism that is specifically lobbed against Black women. And it's rooted in stereotypes about and against Black women, as well as them, these notions that they don't adhere to white heteropatriarchal supremacist norms.
These ad hominem attacks have prompted even some of Harris's harshest Republican critics to try to reel in the narrative.
This is not personal with regard to Kamala Harris, and her ethnicity or her gender have nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Scholars say there is a groundswell of support for women sticking to more traditional roles in society, as seen in the burgeoning Instagram-friendly tradwife movement, which sees women's roles as homemakers, mothers, and helpmeets. But some women voters dismiss these gendered attacks as ridiculous.
That's the sexist people, that's all for men, that's all. They said that even when Miss Clinton was trying to run, they were like, oh no, she's a woman.
Presidential polls has risen. Anita Powell, VOA News, the White House.
Vice President Harris and former Republican President Donald Trump should engage with diaspora American voters who are almost evenly divided between the two major political parties. Many analysts believe the 2024 election could see diaspora communities playing a crucial role and potentially determining the outcome. Viewers Paul Ndiho spoke with Yetunde Odubesan Omede, a global affairs and politics professor at the State University of New York Farmingdale State College, about the diaspora vote.
America would not be America without the migration of thousands, millions of people who came and built this country to where it is today. Both parties really need to break down the categories of the voting blocks. It's not just we're looking at middle class. We're not looking at just working class. Within these classes, there are various voting blocks that they have to be strategic enough to actually make sure that they are galvanizing that vote. It would be to their disadvantage, right? Both sides, if they don't look at the power of the diaspora, whether background you come from, whether it's the African diaspora, right, whether it's the Caribbean diaspora, whether it's Asian diaspora, these are major voting blocks that should not be ignored. They are beneficial to the United States. They have added their own quota, right? They have, contributed to the progression of the country. And I think when it comes to Vice President Harris, she should definitely not make that mistake. And of course, President Trump, they're all looking at voting blocks. They're looking at the working class, the blue collar, they're speaking to all of these social economic groups, not understanding and categorizing African Americans as a blanket categorization when there are various different ethnic backgrounds within that voting bloc. And they need to make sure that they have people on their team, on their campaign team, who are from these voting blocs that can speak to their needs, that are studying their trends, that are seeing their voting trends over the years, and be able to provide these candidates with the information they need. So when they do go on the campaign trail, they're not making blanket statements, they're making more targeted statements. And I think that's what we need to see moving forward.
You've probably seen some of these analysts who have argued that it's very hard to reach the diaspora because of its diversity. That we are very diverse, in a sense that we cut across almost all continents, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you target a group like that?
It may be very hard to reach diaspora, but I really don't buy that, because at the same time, if you're in the political landscape and you are running for campaign and you are running for one of the highest offices in the land, it is your really responsibility to ensure that you are doing the critical and necessary, field work and research on who are my constituents, who are the people that I need to make sure to get on my team. So if you are seeing that there have been organizations or that have been popping up, right? So Nigerian Americans for Harris, or whether they're Nigerian Americans for Trump, whatever it may be, it would be to the disadvantage of that political candidate to not study those things and to not study these grassroots organizations that are coming up in support of their campaign.
What makes the diaspora a critical mass?
Because one, they're the bridge. So many people who are in the diaspora have very strong bonds to the countries that they left, right? And they're living here in the United States. And for far too long, many of the elected officials on the campaign trail didn't quite understand those nuances, didn't understand the power of the diaspora vote and what the role the diasporans play, and that relationship they have with the United States and their respective homes and their respective countries where they came from. And so that's why it's very critical that there are people on their team, on their campaign team, who are aware of these nuances, who understand the background, who understand specific countries that may be focal points for each candidate, so that when they are on the campaign trail, they can speak to it.
That was Dr. Yetunde Odubesano-Mede, a professor of global affairs and politics at the State University of New York, Farmingdale State College, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndiho. Now to the Mpox outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Vaccines to help curb an escalating Mpox outbreak in Congo and neighboring countries may still not reach the Central African nation for months, even as the World Health Organization considers following Africa's top public health agency in declaring the outbreak an emergency. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention declared a public health emergency of continental concern on Tuesday for the first time ever, and on Wednesday, a WHO-led panel is meeting to decide if it represents a global threat. Experts are hoping the meetings will galvanize action worldwide, but many obstacles remain, including limited vaccine supply, funding, and competing disease outbreaks. Sources involved in planning a vaccination rollout in Congo say it is unlikely to begin before October. Extensive droughts fueled by climate change are contributing to the desertification of land across Eastern Africa and threatening the livelihoods of millions in the region. One company is investing in large-scale solutions to help these at-risk communities, and it is doing it with a smile. VOA's Anthony Labruto explains.
Desertification has become one of the most prevalent results of climate change in Eastern Africa. As land dries out from increased temperatures and from overuse of groundwater, plant life begins to die, creating a deadly cycle that robs animals of habitat and communities of farmland and stable incomes. Just Dig It, a grassroots organization that fights global warming by regreening African landscapes, is looking to reverse this trend.
We mainly restore degraded rangelands or landscape or ecosystems from a biodiversity language perspective by mainly two key interventions. One is we do rainwater harvesting, and this we do through digging of bands, or what are now known as the earth miles or the water trenches. And then we also do that through the farmer-managed natural regeneration.
These water trenches are a game changer in remediating dry lands and improving the livelihoods of people who live around them. Just Dig It's innovative approach especially benefits those pastoral communities that often house large, impermanent settlements in Eastern Africa.
Livestock depends on this degraded landscape. So during drought, they suffer most. And when it rains, they suffer heavy flooding season. So what, aside from preaching impact, we preach something that directly correlates with their local livelihoods and local well-being. So that's why we have a very easy buy-in from the local communities. So it's not a foreign concept. It's not an African concept. It's an humanity concept.
Nirandire's teams go beyond where most aid organizations would stop by incorporating local and community participation throughout the process.
We involve the local women now through the landscape restoration enterprise in harvesting the grass seeds, which they sell back to us and sell to other entities in the region. And then they also harvest the grass for their livestock. So in this way, there's some income, it's an income generating opportunity or activity. These are pastoral communities, and also we do interventions in areas with high wildlife density. So what we do, we work with the local communities to establish what we call the grazing management committee. So in this case, once a particular land is restored, we don't say no, don't graze. They graze, but in a controlled way, they alternate or alternate over time. So in this case, the community policing also plays a key role to allow the grass to really grow and take.
During the past 10 years that Just Dig It has been on the ground in Eastern Africa, the company has used satellite imaging in its regreening processes. It also has built close connections with local communities that help the company document the monumental changes they've achieved on the ground.
As I speak to you, as of September last year, we have over 400,000 hectares of land under intensive and extensive restoration in the region. We have established more than 12 grass seed banks that are mainly targeting empowering the local women. And presently, last week we celebrated with our partners in Tanzania, having regenerated, not planted, regenerated 18 million trees.
Just Dig It's next goal for regreening is already in the works. Within the next 3 years, the company plans to restore an additional 100,000 hectares in Kenya, 100,000 in Tanzania, and another 100,000 in Senegal. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Some children in Cameroon are spending their summer selling goods on the street to generate income for their families. But the government is warning parents against violating child labor practices and exposing minors to dangers. Joseka Danhatu reports from Buea.
The cost of living has gone up in Cameroon, and the impact is being felt by Chirobe Stella's family of 10 who rely on her for survival. So, to lessen the burden, she sends her teenage children to the streets to sell goods during summer holidays.
They must go and hawk so that we can meet up with our house activities, maybe our clothing, our feeding, yes, our health issues, because at times we do fall sick. Things are very expensive now in our country.
Despite her efforts to provide for her family's needs, Stella is concerned about the risk her children may face while selling on the streets.
When they go out there, we're praying to God, God protect my children, because the outside is bad. We cannot predict what can happen out there. Yes, we do have concern, and we caution them. You people should not go and stay out till late.
Unemployment and poverty are driving many Cameroonian parents to put their children to work, according to a 2023 report from the Danish Refugee Council. The report highlights that girls selling goods in neighborhoods are especially at risk, facing dangers like sexual harassment and kidnapping. In response, the
Cameroon in academics, education go with what we call co-curricular activities, as we may name them, but which are a vital tool to present-day life.
Government authorities like Stella say that initiatives providing economic support to parents are essential in preventing child labor. She also said that they offer training in industrial equipment so they can maintain jobs and have a stable income.
We are making it to be sustainable because we want women to be economically independent so that they don't depend on people.
The government-funded free training programs are important in Buea subdivision, where over 70 women graduate annually from the Women's Empowerment Program, many of whom receive equipment and startup capital to secure better jobs. Josika Danhatu, VOA News, Buea, Cameroon.
Would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come, tapping technology to improve lives through healthcare, transport, and connectivity. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, also known as AGOA, provides duty-free access to the United States market. It was established in 2000 and now it needs to be reauthorized. Join me, Vincent Makori, and my guests as we discuss the future and opportunities of AGOA and its reauthorization on the next Straight Talk Africa.
It has been said that art is the windows to man's soul. Without it, he would never be able to see beyond his immediate world, nor could the world see the man within. On the next Our Voices, we'll explore the benefits of art therapy with an emphasis on the mental health advantages, as well as how it can address culture, gender diversity, and social justice issues. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
In other news, a Ugandan court has found former Lord's Resistance Army Commander Thomas Kwoyelo, 50, guilty on 44 of 78 war crime charges. The charges included murder, kidnap with intent to murder, pillaging, cruel treatment, torture, rape, and crimes against humanity. Kwoyelo was captured in 2009 in the Democratic Republic of Congo. His sentencing date has not yet been set. Ethiopian Olympians have returned home to a mixed reaction as some fans expressed dissatisfaction with what they say was the below-par performance of the team at the recent Olympics. While Team Ethiopia was welcomed at the airport, some sports fans say they are disappointed to see Ethiopia lose races that it has previously won. Ethiopia secured 1 gold medal and 3 silver medals at the Paris Olympics. And South African Olympic medalists received a hero's welcome home Tuesday near Johannesburg. Bayanda Walaza, a member of the South African relay team that won a silver medal, reacted after arriving from the Paris. Tatiana Smith won gold in the 100-meter breaststroke and silver in the 200-meter breaststroke. South Africa secured 6 medals at the Olympics and 1 gold, 3 silver, and 2 bronze. The construction industry is finding new uses for artificial intelligence, with autonomous robots documenting the building progress and detecting potential hazards. VOA's Natasha Mosgovaya reports from Seattle.
When the construction crew on this Seattle, Washington apartment building clocks out for the day, 2 autonomous robots backed by artificial intelligence, or AI, get to work.
So the robot drives into each room on the floor. It has the floor plans already loaded in it, so it knows where the walls are going to be. And what it does is it moves into each space and takes a 360-degree high-resolution photo. And it goes through and it does the entire floor for that, and then it uploads those photos into its cloud-based platform where it runs through a number of AI-driven analysis that then report out to the project team.
When the robots were introduced to the staff 3 months ago as part of a pilot project collaboration between the Skanska Construction Company and Boston-based Nextera Robotics, some were skeptical.
I have not seen a robot that's able to autonomously kind of maneuver around a construction site that's ever changing. There's always things in the way. There's always people moving in and out. But these do a really good job at that.
Images captured by these robots go through an AI model trained to recognize thousands of construction-related objects.
It's analyzing them and saying, okay, what do I see here? Are the walls painted? Is it drywall? Did the ceiling have framing? Is it painted concrete? Is the air duct installed? Is the air duct insulated? It's looking for all of these things and then processing them into our online platform and then displaying them in a really digestible way.
Workers' faces are blurred on the robot-captured images to protect their privacy. Project leaders insist that the robots are there to help people with tedious or dangerous tasks.
Being able to track the progress amongst all the trades on a 31-story, 324-unit residential tower. That's just something that would be extremely time-consuming and very, very difficult for a human to do.
Riles says that the wider adoption of AI in construction is just a matter of time. Natasha Mozgovaya, VOA News, Seattle.
Technology is changing the way we behave and operate. It's improving our lives from communication and transport to healthcare and connectivity. Across Africa, young people are using technology to drive significant change. Let's hear more on this from Africa 54 technology reporter Paul Ndio. Hello, Paul.
Thanks, Esther. Technology creators are designing mobile-based businesses, participating in e-commerce, creating skills through online education, and developing tech-driven solutions for the most pressing challenges. I spoke with Dr. Teju Baba, a West African physician, podcaster, and author of 50 African Pioneers, about how he leverages technology.
Technology is really the key things to the changes that we will see, that we are seeing, and that we will continue to see. When I was growing up in Benin, I don't remember having access to a number of resources. I think one of the biggest aspects of how technology is changing Africa is the access to knowledge and the access to information. In Africa, you can see how technology is going around. People are really making the most of it. The problem now is the access to, the cost of internet is very high. Let me share a quick, example with you. When I started doing my podcast, I didn't know anything about podcasting tools, like software and stuff like that. So I went on YouTube and I found a young man. He was 12 years old. It was literally a 12-year-old boy who taught me how to do podcasting. And that's fantastic. That's, for me, it's amazing.
You brought up a very interesting point. You talked about the cost of the internet. In some cases, there is no electricity. So that means a significant number of people on the continent are being left out. What can African governments do to close that gap?
When you discuss with colleagues and friends from other countries in the continent, it's the same. People are complaining that, you can spend a whole day without electricity. It's really important. How do you make sure you can sustain a business without electricity? So it's a huge, unfortunate, common point between the different countries. I feel like the revolution around electricity needs to happen. It will impact everything around us, not just for for charging our phones or whatever, but really making the difference in terms of how we can use that resource to change the other aspects, especially around the technology. How do we use laptops? How do we use 3D printers? How do we, this kind of thing require electricity, unfortunately.
Nixon, former president of the United States, who said that if you want history to judge you correctly, you either write it yourself or commission somebody to write it for you. And in your particular case, you could not find that history, so you decided to write a book about African culture, right? So tell us more about that as well.
It's called 50 African Pioneers. You have a title in French and in English. Since 1880, basically, period starting 1880 to today, there are 50 people, 25 women, 25 men, to make sure we have good representation for every gender. We have, for example, art and entertainment, literature, health and medicine, sports and games, science, technology, engineering, human rights and society, entrepreneurship and education, governance and leadership. So you have all these criteria that's led us to get into a selection. And what the book does is to tell you about this man who was the first one to do something about technology in the continent. And there is his history here in French and in English. What he said is, our goal is to have leadership and expertise, not just in Africa, but globally. That was said in 1975. So I think he's a man of vision, as you can see. He was one of the first African computer scientists. And in 1994, he established the first internet service provider in West Africa. And when you read the text, you will see that he was in the US. He was working for a digital equipment company. He moved back to Ghana and created the first domain names accredited by the international body for internet names, this kind of thing, ICANN. And he was really key. He was so critical in the development of internet in our continent and computer systems in our continent that I can almost safely say that if you don't have this kind of guy, we are not here today talking about technology. African people don't know this guy. And that was why I went into this book.
Dr. Teju Baba is a West African physician, a podcaster, and author of 50 African Pioneers. That's today's report. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho each Wednesday for another fantastic tech segment right here on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.